Don't forget to record.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, so today we're going to be learning about ratios and proportions.
All right, so first off, what is a ratio? A ratio describes the relationship between two things. So in this example, if I have 4 apples and 3 bananas, the ratio between them would be 4:3, or the fraction 4 over 3. And make sure it says the ratio between apples and bananas, not the ratio between bananas and apples. So it's 4:3, not 3:4. And that's a common mistake people make, so just make sure you look at the question carefully. So normally, ratio would just refer to the relationship between two things. But if the problem says to express your answer as ratio, then that means you have to use the colon form, so A to B, rather than the fraction form.
So on this slide, you can see 3 ways to express a ratio. The first form is 4/3. This is the fractional form. The second way is what they would say. The second form uses a colon, 4:3, and this is the form you would need to express your answer if they say to express it in a ratio. And finally, you can express a ratio in word form. And to do that, you just connect the two amounts with the word to, so 4:3.
So here's an example problem. What is the ratio of the number of red to blue circles? And you need to express your answer in 3 forms. A ratio, so with the colon, a fraction, and in word form. Go ahead and type your answer in the chat when you find it. Okay, that's pretty good. Just make sure you guys are simplifying your fractions. So 3/2 instead of 6/4. And you've got the ratios 3:2 and the word form 3:2 correct. Yes, Sanvi, make sure you simplify that. So I'll just say the solution, even though I think you guys all get this. A good way to think of a ratio is to think of them as parts. Oops. So the blue, so the red, so 2 circles would be 1 part. So the red would have 3 parts since it has 2, 4, and 6. That's 3 parts. And the blue circles would have 2 parts since if 1 part is 2 circles, then there are 4 blue circles. So it would be 2 parts, so 3:2.
So now we're going to move on to proportions. A proportion is when you set two ratios equal to each other, and you can use this to solve for an unknown value if you know the ratio between them. So for example, if you know the number of apples and the numbers of bananas in a basket are in a ratio of 4:3, and you know you have 16 apples, how many bananas are in the basket? And you can type your answer in the chat. So yeah, the answer is 12. And to solve this problem, we can set up a proportion. the ratio, you know that the ratio of apples to bananas is 4:3. So on the left side of the equal sign, you can write 4 apples over 3 bananas. On the right side of the equal sign, you can write 16 apples over blank bananas. You can use a variable like x. And these two have to be equal in order that the ratio remains the same. And you can also notice that to get from 4 to 16 apples, you multiply by 4. So to get from 3 to x bananas, you would also have to multiply by 4 in order to keep that ratio the same. So now the number of bananas would be 3 times 4, which is 12. And this is one way to solve a proportion.
All right, here is the other way to solve a proportion. And it is called cross multiplication. So if you, okay, so that was like Amy's way of multiplying them to get 12 bananas. And here is cross multiplication. So you draw diagonal lines connecting like the term, the first numerator and then the second denominator term. And then you just multiply those numbers together. Then you do the same thing for the first denominator and the second numerator. And then you set them to be equal to each other. So here would be 4 times x equals 3 times 1. Oh, sorry, 3 times 16. And that gets you 4x equals 48. Divide both sides by 4, and your answer is x equals 12. So same thing, you can choose whichever is easiest for the specific problem, or whichever one comes more easily to you.
So in this problem, solve the following proportion for the value of x. You can choose either of the two methods we just showed you. You can either use the cross multiplication method or you can use the normal method, but try to choose the most efficient method. And also, along with your answer, type which method you use, the normal way or cross multiplication. So for this question, the answer would be 3,200. Some of you all got that. So for this question, the best method would actually be just to use the normal way, because if you used cross multiplication, you would have to multiply 800 by 16, and that gives a really big number. Instead, just use the normal way. So let's look at the numerators first. To get from 4 to 16, we have to multiply by 4. This means that we must also multiply the denominators by 4. So x would have to equal 800 times 4. And 800 times 4 is 3,200, which is your answer.
All right, next example. This is similar to last time. Solve it using the best method. And put your answer and your method in the chat.
Oh, and I think there's an issue with the problem. Wait a second.
Yeah, pretend like it should be 0.01. So
Yeah.
one of those zeros is gone.
And if you're stuck, here's a hint. For this question, try to use cross multiplication. And don't forget to take x out of the denominator and into the numerator.
All right, I'll give you guys another hint. So when you're using cross multiplication, you should multiply the 3 by the x and put that on one side of the equal sign, and then multiply 800 by 0.01 and put that on the other side. And then solve it like you would like a normal one variable equation.
Yolanda put the equation that you would get after you use cross multiplication. If you're really stuck, you can try to solve that.
All right, so nice job, Gary. Although, usually you should just keep it in the fractional form, since this question doesn't ask for decimal and it's like you're simplifying the proportion. And so here I'll explain cross multiplication since it seems like that might be a little bit confusing for you guys. So you multiply, like think of drawing diagonal lines across the equal sign. So 3 times x, and then the other diagonal line would go from 800 to 0.01, not that what's on the screen. And so 800 times 0.01 is basically just 800 divided by 100. So that gets you 8. And now the equation is 3x equals 8. So you divide both sides by 3 and you get x equals 8/3.
So now we're going to take a quick look at bigger ratios. So far, we've looked at ratios that consist of just two terms. They're in the form a colon B or A over B. But ratios can consist of many terms like A colon B colon C colon D colon E, or A, B, C, D, and E can be any number. But usually you won't see those as often. Usually you'll probably see like 4 terms at most. And just try not to let these ratios like make you a little scared, because you can just split them up into smaller ratios. So for example, on a farm, there are 4 ducks for every 5 chickens and 1 horse for every 2 ducks. What is the ratio of the number of horses to ducks to chickens? So for this example, it's asking for horses to ducks to chickens. So that would be a ratio with 3 terms. So that would be in the form A colon B colon C. And what you want to do with this question is you want to try to notice the overlap between these first 2 ratios. You know that there's 4 ducks for every 5 chickens and 1 horse for every 2 ducks. So in both of these 2 ratios, the ducks to chickens and the horse to ducks, there's a duck term. And to make one big ratio, you want to try to make these duck terms equal. So yeah, good job, Sambi. The answer is 2 to 4 to 5. And here's how you would go about solving this problem. First, as I said, we have to find, we're looking for one big ratio in the form of A colon B colon C, where A, B, and C can be any number, but they have to be like integers. So first, we multiply the horses to ducks ratio by 2 in order to make the ducks term in both ratios equal. So originally the horses to ducks ratio was 1 to 2. If we multiply both of those by 2, we get the ratio 2 to 4. Both of 1 to 2 and 2 to 4 are both equivalent because they're just fractions. 1/2 is the same as 2/4. But the thing is that now the ducks term is 4. And we can see that in the ducks to chickens ratio, the ducks term is already 4. So what we can do now is sort of like put these 2 ratios together because the ducks term is the same. So now our big ratio is 2 to 4 to 5.
Oops.
Oh.
Sorry about that.
Our big ratio which is the horses to ducks to chickens, is 2 to 4 to 5, and that's our answer.
All right. So now we're going to move on to Jamboard, try something sort of new. So Amy, if you could put the link in the chat.
Yep.
Okay. Can everyone see the Jamboard on the screen? All right, so we will move on to the first problem.
It looks like someone has already written the answer, but that's okay.
Please don't make like random edits ahead of where we're at and before we tell you to, but that doesn't really matter. You guys can just use the sticky note tool on the sidebar on the left. If you look around, you can find the sticky note and put your answer like that. All right, good. That's word form.
Remember that. Notice that the question is asking for a common fraction.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so nice. We have a correct answer, which is 4/3. So if you count the consonants, there are Y, L, N, and D. That's 4 consonants, and there's 3 vowels, O, A, and A. So the question says to put your answer in a common fraction. So 4/3 is the correct answer.
Okay, so for this problem, in a blueprint, 1 inch represents 50 feet. How many feet would 9.7 inches on the blueprint represent? So yeah, good job. Most of y'all seem to have gotten it. The answer is 485 feet. And you can get this by setting up to get this, you can set up a proportion. 1 inch would correspond to 50 feet. And then you can set that equal to 9.7 inches over question mark feet. So now we can notice that to get from 1 inch to 9.7 inches, we multiplied by 9.7. So that means to get from 50 feet to however many feet, we would also have to multiply by 9.7. So the answer would be 50 times 9.7, which equals 485. So good job.
Okay, next problem. 3 business partners make a profit of $45,000 and decide to split the profits in a ratio of 2 to 3 to 4. What is the smallest profit that one of the business partners receives? And for the future, try not to work ahead on any problems behind this one to help keep the lesson on track.
Is the answer 10K?
Yep, it is. Nice job. Anyone who got 10K. All right, so how do we get there? Well, first, we see the ratio is 2 to 3 to 4. And then that means that the profit of $45,000 has been split into 9 equal parts because 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 9. And so if you divide 45 by 9, you get 5,000. So that means one part of the profit is 5,000. And the smallest profit is 2 parts. So that's 5,000 times 2 or $10,000.
Okay, so problem 4. A bag has 7 marbles, of which 4 of the marbles are red. X marbles are added to the bag so that the fraction of red marbles is 3/4. How many marbles are added to the bag? And if you are a little bit confused on how to solve this question, the first step you should do is set up a ratio to the number between the number of red marbles and the total number of marbles in the bag. And then from there, you can set up a proportion based on how many marbles are added to it. Okay, so the answer to this question is 5. So good job, whoever got that. Now, there are 2 ways to solve this problem. For one way, you could test for values of x. You can pretend x equals 1, and that would mean that there would be 5 red marbles and 8 marbles in total. So the ratio would be 5/8, which isn't right. So then you could test 2 marbles and see what the ratio would be. In that case, the ratio would be 6 red marbles divided by 9 total marbles, which isn't right. And you could keep trying until you suddenly reached x equals 5 and you realize, oh, the fraction of red marbles is now 3/4, so that's your answer. But a more algebraic way to solve this using proportions is to do this. So first, the initial ratio of red marbles to total marbles is 4/7. Then it says that x marbles are added to the bag. I don't know if I made this question this clear or not, but the X marbles added were red. So that would mean the red marbles would have X added to them. And that would also mean total marbles would have X added to them. So then this should be equal to 3/4. And that's how you set up a proportion. So then you can cross multiply because that would be the easiest method. So first we can multiply these 2 terms to get 4 times 4 plus x. Then we can multiply these 2 terms to get 3 times 7 plus x. So now we can multiply this out. 4 times 4 is 16. And then 4 times x is 4x. Then 3 times 7 is 21. And 3 times x is 3x. So now we have an equation, and we can solve for x by subtracting 3x from both sides and subtracting 16 from both sides. And that would get us x equals 5. And this is a more algebraic way to solve it. And this is also the method we were intending for you to solve it. But you could also just try random values of x and eventually come upon the correct answer. So, yeah.
All right, problem 5. A bag contains only pennies and nickels. The ratio of pennies to nickels in the bag of coins is 4:9. If there's a total of $2.94 in the bag, how many nickels are there?
And for this question, if you are stuck, the hint that I'm going to give is that you can convert the ratio of pennies to nickels into a ratio of the amount of money in pennies to the amount of money in nickels. And from there, you can find, you can use the total to find the number of nickels. Okay, I'm going to write my hint on the Jamboard. So here is the ratio of pennies to nickels. And pennies are worth 1 cent each. So, and nickels are worth 5 cents each. So if we want to convert this to a ratio of money instead of a ratio of coins, we can do 4 pennies times 1 cent to 9 nickels times 5 cents. And this would give us 4 to 45. And this is what this ratio tells us is basically what is the ratio between the amount of money contained in pennies to the amount of money contained in nickels. And this can connect to the total amount of money. So I'm going to keep going with this sort of hint solution. The ratio to the amount of money contained in pennies to the amount of money contained in nickels is 4 cents to 45 cents. This would mean that there's a total, in this ratio here, there would be a total of 49 parts because 4 plus 45 is 49. And the total amount of money is $2.94. So if we divide the two of those together, we can get a factor which tells us what to multiply this by in order to get the true total amount of each coin. And just remember that this is in cents. So if I want to convert to dollars, I have to insert a decimal point. So if we divide $2.94 by 49 cents, we get 6. But that just tells us if we multiply this ratio by 6, we'll get 24 cents to 270 cents. What this means is that in total, in this bag, 24 cents of the $2.94 is contained in pennies, and 270 cents is contained in nickels. So because we know that 270 cents are contained in nickels, we can divide that by 5. So divide this by 5 to get the total number of nickels, which, yes, it is 54. So yeah. So if you have any questions or you're still confused about this question, please ask, because we want to make this as clear as possible.
I don't understand. Can you please explain it again?
Okay, so here we have the ratio of the pennies to nickels, but the question doesn't tell us anything about the total number of pennies and nickels. All the question tells us is that there's going to be a total of $2.94 in this bag. So in order to make this ratio more useful for us, we're going to convert it into telling us how much money is contained in pennies and how much money is contained in nickels. And to do that, we can, because a penny is worth 1 cent, and a nickel is worth 5 cents. We can multiply the 4 in this ratio by 1, which tells us that there's a 4 cents. And we can multiply the 9 in this ratio by 5 to tell us 45 cents. So what this means, this ratio is 4 cents to 45 cents, which means that every 4 cents of the of this total money is contained in pennies, and every 45 cents is contained in nickels. So basically, it's similar to this ratio of pennies to nickels, except now it's talking about the value instead of the actual amount of coins. And because a ratio basically tells you the number of parts in a ratio compares the number of parts something has. So this ratio compares the amount of money. So the total number of parts in this ratio would be 4 plus 45, or 49 cents. And the total amount of money is $2.94. So if we divide these two together, we get this number 6. And what this number tells us is that if we multiply this ratio by 6, we can get the actual value of pennies and the actual value of nickels, not just a ratio. So if we multiply this ratio by 6, and this is what we get over here. We get 24 cents to 270 cents. And what this tells us is that in total in this bag, there are 24 cents in pennies, and there are 270 cents in nickels. And if you want to confirm, you can add these two up and you can get the original total amount. So then using this, we can find the number of nickels by taking the amount of money in nickels and dividing it by 5, because each nickel is worth 5 cents. So after we do that, we find that we have 54 nickels. So does that help?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, so moving on to the next problem then. This one would be a similar principle to the previous one. Okay, so going with what we had in the previous problem, the number of cows in the the number of chickens in the ratio is 6. Well, the parts of chicken in the ratio is 6, and chickens have 2 legs, so you multiply that by 2. And then cows have 4 legs, so you multiply the part in the ratio 4 by 4. So that gets you 16. Okay, I'm just gonna forget writing out the equation and just write this out. And so that means that horses would then be 4 because horses have 4 legs. So so here, this is not like the end ratio, but this is a stepping stone. So then you add all of these together to get the parts of the total number of legs. So 12 plus 16 plus 4 would get you 32. And then 16 of those parts is represented by the cow legs. So, and that reduces down to 1 to 2. So that means that half of the 192 legs is taken up by cow legs, which basically means that 96 legs belong to cows. And so 96 divided by 4, because cows have 4 legs, would tell you that there are 24 cows. So a good number of you got that right. So good job. 24 cow legs. Amy, do you think there's enough time for another problem?
Let me see. I think we will have enough time for one more. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just go to the next slide.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay, so this problem is about triangle similarity. So when two triangles are similar, it means that their angles are the same, and their sides are proportional to one another. So if triangle ABC is similar to triangle YZX, and if side AB equals 8, BC equals 9, and YZ equals 16, what is the length of side ZX?
I'll provide some labels to help
Oops.
you. Oops. Okay.
And if you're a little confused at what it means for triangles to be similar, in these two triangles, it would mean that side AB divided by side BC, or like the ratio of side AB to BC equals the ratio of side YZ to side ZX. So this side sort of like corresponds to this side. And this side corresponds to this side. And you can set up two ratios as a proportion between them. And you can figure out the unknown value.
Okay, so building on what Amy said, after you find that proportion, then you should fill in the values that the question gave you. Oops, what am I doing? So, side AB is 8, side BC is 9, side YZ equals 16, and then you're trying to solve for side ZX. So can anyone tell me what method should we use to solve this? Cross multiplication or the normal method? You can unmute or type your answer in the chat. Anyone?
We have one in the chat.
All right, nice. We should, of course, use the normal method because you can see here 8 times 2 equals 16. So we do the same to the denominators. 9 times 2 equals 18. And so then that means that side ZX equals 18. Does that make sense to everyone?
Okay. So if there are no more questions, then you guys are free to go because it's 6 o'clock. So yeah, have a good evening, everyone.